Jacques-Louis David was an influential French painter in the neoclassical style, considered to be the preeminent painter of the era. In the 1780s, his cerebral brand of history painting marked a change in taste away from Rococo frivolity toward a classical austerity and severity, heightened feeling harmonizing with the moral climate of the final years of the Ancien Régime. David later became an active supporter of the French Revolution and friend of Maximilien Robespierre, and was effectively a dictator of the arts under the French Republic. Imprisoned after Robespierre's fall from power, he aligned himself with yet another political regime upon his release, that of Napoleon, the First Consul of France. At this time he developed his empire style, notable for its use of warm Venetian colors. After Napoleon's fall from imperial power and a Bourbon revival, David exiled himself to Brussels, then in the United Kingdom of the Netherlands, where he remained until his death. David had a large number of pupils, making him the strongest influence in French art of the early 19th century, especially academic salon painting. Early life. Jacques-Louis David was born into a prosperous family in Paris on the 30th of August 1748. When he was about 9, his father was killed in a duel and his mother left him with his well-off architect uncles. They saw to it that he received an excellent education at the Collège des Quatre Nations, University of Paris, but he was never a good student. He had a facial tumor that impeded his speech, and he was always preoccupied with drawing. He covered his notebooks with drawings, and he once said, "I was always hiding behind the instructor's chair, drawing for the duration of the class." Soon, he desired to be a painter, but his uncles and mother wanted him to be an architect. He overcame the opposition and went to learn from François Boucher, the leading painter of the time, who was also a distant relative. Boucher was a Rococo painter, but tastes were changing, and the fashion for Rococo was giving way to a more classical style. Boucher decided that instead of taking over David's tutelage, he would send David to his friend, Joseph-Marie Vien, a painter who embraced the classical reaction to Rococo. Though David attended the Royal Academy, based in what is now the Louvre, each year the Academy awarded an outstanding student the prestigious Prix de Rome, which funded a 3 to 5 year stay in the Eternal City, the culmination of the Academy's educational program. The Rome trip provided its winners the opportunity to study the remains of classical antiquity and the works of the Italian Renaissance masters at first hand. Each pensioner was lodged in the French Academy's Roman outpost, which from the years 1737 to 1793 was the Palazzo Mancini in the Via del Corso. David competed for, and failed to win, the prize for 3 consecutive years, each failure contributing to his lifelong grudge against the institution. After his second loss in 1772, David went on a hunger strike, which lasted 2.5 days before the faculty encouraged him to continue painting. Confident he now had the support and backing needed to win the prize, he resumed his studies with great zeal, only to fail to win the Prix de Rome again the following year. Finally, in 1774, David was awarded the Prix de Rome on the strength of his painting of Erasistratus discovering the cause of Antiochus's disease, a subject set by the judges. In October 1775 he made the journey to Italy with his mentor, Joseph-Marie Vien, who had just been appointed director of the French Academy at Rome. While in Italy, David especially studied the works of 17th-century masters such as Poussin, Caravaggio, and the Carracci. Although he declared, "The antique will not seduce me, it lacks animation, it does not move," David filled 12 sketch-books with drawings that he and his studio used as model books for the rest of his life. He was introduced to the painter Raphael Mengs, who opposed the tendency in Rococo painting to sweeten and trivialize ancient subjects, advocating instead the rigorous study of classical sources and close adherence to ancient models. Mengs' principled, historicizing approach to the representation of classical subjects profoundly influenced David's pre-revolutionary painting, such as the Vestal Virgin, probably from the 1780s. Mengs also introduced David to the theoretical writings on ancient sculpture by Johann Joachim Winckelmann, the German scholar held to be the founder of modern art history. In 1779, David toured the newly excavated ruins of Pompeii, which deepened his belief that the persistence of classical culture was an index of its eternal conceptual and formal power. While in Rome, David also assiduously studied the high Renaissance painters, Raphael making a profound and lasting impression on the young French artist. Early work. David's fellow students at the Academy found him difficult to get along with, but they recognized his genius. David's stay at the French Academy in Rome was extended by a year, but in July 1780 he returned to Paris. There, he found people ready to use their influence for him, and he was made a member of the Royal Academy. He sent the Academy 2 paintings, and both were included in the Salon of 1781, a high honor. He was praised by his famous contemporary painters, but the administration of the Royal Academy was very hostile to this young upstart. After the Salon, the king granted David lodging in the Louvre, an ancient and much desired privilege of great artists. When the contractor of the king's buildings, M. Pecole, was arranging with David, he asked the artist to marry his daughter, Marguerite Charlotte. This marriage brought him money and eventually 4 children. David had his own pupils, about 40 to 50, and was commissioned by the government to paint Horace defended by his father, but he soon decided, only in Rome can I paint Romans. His father-in-law provided the money he needed for the trip, and David headed for Rome with his wife and 3 of his students, one of whom, Jean-Germain Drouais, was the Prix de Rome winner of that year. In Rome, David painted his famous Oath of the Horatii, 1784. In this piece, the artist references Enlightenment values while alluding to Rousseau's social contract. The republican ideal of the general will becomes the focus of the painting, with all 3 sons positioned in compliance with the father. The oath between the characters can be read as an act of unification of men to the binding of the state. The issue of gender roles also becomes apparent in this piece, as the women in Horatii greatly contrast the group of brothers. David depicts the father with his back to the women, shutting them out of the oath-making ritual. They also appear to be smaller in scale than the male figures. The masculine virility and discipline displayed by the men's rigid and confident stances is also severely contrasted to the slouching, swooning female softness created in the other half of the composition. Here we see the clear division of male-female attributes that confine the sexes to specific roles under Rousseau's popularized doctrine of separate spheres. These revolutionary ideals are also apparent in the distribution of eagles. While Oath of the Horatii and the Tennis Court Oath stress the importance of masculine self-sacrifice for one's country and patriotism, the distribution of eagles would ask for self-sacrifice for one's emperor and the importance of battlefield glory. In 1787, David did not become the director of the French Academy in Rome, which was a position he wanted dearly. The count in charge of the appointment said David was too young, but said he would support him in 6 to 12 years. This situation would be one of many that would cause him to lash out at the Academy in years to come. For the Salon of 1787, David exhibited his famous Death of Socrates. Condemned to death, Socrates, strong, calm and at peace, discusses the immortality of the soul. Surrounded by Crito, his grieving friends and students, he is teaching, philosophizing, and in fact, thanking the god of health, Asclepius, for the hemlock brew which will ensure a peaceful death. The wife of Socrates can be seen grieving alone outside the chamber, dismissed for her weakness. Plato is depicted as an old man seated at the end of the bed. Critics compared the Socrates with Michelangelo's Sistine ceiling and Raphael's stance, and one, after 10 visits to the Salon, described it as, in every sense, perfect. Denis Diderot said it looked like he copied it from some ancient bas-relief. The painting was very much in tune with the political climate at the time. For this painting, David was not honored by royal works of encouragement. For his next painting, David created the lictors bring to Brutus the bodies of his sons. The work had tremendous appeal for the time. Before the opening of the Salon, the French Revolution had begun. The National Assembly had been established, and the Bastille had fallen. The royal court did not want propaganda agitating the people, so all paintings had to be checked before being hung. David's portrait of Lavoisier, who was a chemist and physicist as well as an active member of the Jacobin Party, was banned by the authorities for such reasons. When the newspapers reported that the government had not allowed the showing of the lictors bring to Brutus the bodies of his sons, the people were outraged, and the royals were forced to give in. The painting was hung in the exhibition, protected by art students. The painting depicts Lucius Junius Brutus, the Roman leader, grieving for his sons. Brutus's sons had attempted to overthrow the government and restore the monarchy, so the father ordered their death to maintain the republic. Thus, Brutus was the heroic defender of the republic, at the cost of his own family. On the right, the mother holds her 2 daughters, and the nurse is seen on the far right, in anguish. Brutus sits on the left, alone, brooding, seemingly dismissing the dead bodies of his sons, knowing what he did was best for his country, but the tense posture of his feet and toes reveals his inner turmoil. The whole painting was a Republican symbol, and obviously had immense meaning during these times in France.